I'd like to call to order our October 4th, 2021 Jones County Board of Education meeting. I'd like to thank all the visitors, guests, and all those watching virtually in attendance. Ms. Candace, please let the record show that we do have a quorum of 5 board members present in the boardroom. Mr. Griffin, Mr. Walston, myself, Mr. Brown, and Ms. Fegall. Also present in attendance is Superintendent Dr. Thigpen, Assistant Superintendent Mr. Bryce Marquis, and on the phone is Board Attorney Colin Shaw. At this time, I'd like to ask all to stand for our pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time, I'll ask for the approval of our regular session Jones County Board of Education meeting minutes from August the 27th and September the 13th.
I move to approve. I'm sorry, Ms. Fegall. You got it. I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Lawson, any motion to approve? Did you second, Ms. Fegall?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Second, Ms. Fegall.
We did it, sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. This time, I'll ask if there's any adjustments to our agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
Motion by Mr. Griffin to approve,
Second.
second by Mr. Brown. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. This time we'll move into item number 2, our public comments.
Good evening. We received an email containing 2 letters. The email was submitted by Amy Mallard Coffey on September 30th. Ms. Coffey is a parent of 4 students, 2 of which were Jones Senior High School football players. Her email and concerns are focused on Camp Lejeune, not allowing visiting fans on their campus for October 1st football game versus Jones Senior. Ms. Coffey requests not scheduling opponents that limit parent attendance. Mr. Alan Mallard also submitted a handwritten letter attached to Ms. Coffey's email. Mr. Mallard shares the same concerns with scheduling games at Camp Lejeune and the frustrations of attending games on base.
Does any other public comments? Nothing. Okay. This time we'll move into item number 3, the discussion items. 3A, facilities report.
Mr. Chairman and board members, you should have a copy of a facility update on Jones County Schools athletic fields. It outlines of work that has been completed this past month and forecast what they will be working on next month. Tim gives us updates and supplies to us each month. And it talks, about next month that they'll be pouring slabs, continuing to lay block and brick and the structures and complete the site utilities. And so we have that for you, and also Tim's available if you have any questions or checks concerning facilities.
You have an end date at this time?
I do not, as far as completion and schedule, everything right now is on schedule. As long as the weather holds out, my forecast is probably completed at the schedule. But I never, you never know what the weather's gonna do for the next 3 to 4 months. Everything's going in as planned, some of the change orders that we talked about, I've already approved, and we'll get that when item comes up. So that's not to hold the project up, because it had to do with foundations and patch. But, as far as everything being on schedule, the topsoil is coming in now, so most of the site prep is already underway and done, the ground stuff's in place. The, parking lot is, already staged is in place for that. So everything's moving on schedule as it should at this point in time.
Do you remember what the completion was in the contract? I couldn't remember.
I'd have to go back and look at the actual contract, but the best my memory serves me was January 21st of 2022.
I thought it was February, but January's even
I
better.
want to say January, but I seen it before.
They done the irrigation yet? The
No,
irrigation system?
the irrigation system they're going to install for the actually all costs in place.
What is that?
January 23rd.
Okay, all right. Any other questions on the facilities? Okay. Appreciate it, Tim.
So,
Item 3B, the budget report.
Good evening, board. You should find a copy of our September finance report. I would like to point out our expenditures are factual, but our revenues are estimates, as the Senate and House has yet to approve the budget. So our allocations are not finalized at this time. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Anything seem out of line to you right now?
Not at this time. They are slowly approving our federal budgets. They would not allow us to receive funding because the state and House had not approved the budget. That's gonna start causing counties to run into the negative, so they are slowly allocating these portions of our federal funding. So, but beyond that, we don't have an issue at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions on the budget report? Moving to item 4A, action items, approval of school improvement plan, Comfort Nasal Pops with Trenton and Jones Senior.
Good evening, I'm Stella Downs, principal of Comfort Elementary School. Our goals are very simple this year. They're the same as they have been for a few years because we have not had a normal year in quite some time. We would like to see 70% of our student body being grade level proficient by the end of the school year as measured by state assessments, this year being DIBELS and EOGs. Our second goal is we would like to see 40% of our students with disabilities who are grade level proficient both in math and reading using those same tools of measurement. Our third goal is related to social emotional learning. We very much believe that we must have social emotional learning must go hand in hand to have academic gains. And so we would like to offer social emotional learning to our students. And then again, meet that 7% goal through our academic performance and also through what is called the DESA, which is a social emotional screening device that we use.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, I am not going to read through our goals. Ours have changed slightly this year, 100% drafted by the staff, with a little bit more emphasis placed on community relationships and building partnerships within our community. I know Mr. Brown's probably tired of hearing me say that I think we're so small, we should be one entity, not two separate. So there has been a considerable amount of emphasis placed on building relationships within the community of Maysville and the school. So we're still looking at growth versus proficiency because as Ms. Downs noted, there has not been a normal year in quite some time. So we just we just changed the verbiage just a little bit on our goals. We still want to see our kids be successful academically. The difference is we just want to look at their growth. Ultimately, proficiency being what is scored per se. So that's still part of it, but we would like to take a look at small increments in growth across the year. We're looking at focusing on PLCs in order for us to take in that student data and their performance and disaggregate it and be able to use that to drive our instruction. The goal 3 references the community stakeholders and building those relationships amongst the community of Maysville and Jones County for that matter. And then the last one is looking at our students that are still struggling academically and emotionally, always educationally, tier 2, tier 3 students, and still helping to show growth in those areas as well. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Pottsville Elementary School, 21-22 school improvement goals. Our first goal is to increase our overall composite on our EOG performance. There are a variety of methods at the school. Our second goal works on our DIBELS and our K2 to increase our overall composite there. School improvement goal 3 continues to work on our targeted black subgroup. While we're not officially identified as a school, we don't want to become one, so we're continuing our targeted support for our African American students at the school. And then our last school improvement goal is aimed at increasing parental attendance and involvement. Very similar to our goals in the past.
How do you think you'll get more parental involvement?
Well, I think some of it this year, by some of the restrictions and stuff being lessened. We had our book fair last week. I was expecting about 7 or 8 kids to come, and I think we had about 27 or 30. So,
Free food.
okay, yes, if you feed them.
That's always important.
Any questions from it?
Good evening. Trent Elementary School improvement goals for this coming up year. For grades 3 through 6, for reading and math, EOG, we would like for our kids to be proficient. We were striving for 50% of our students in grades 3 through 6. For goal 2, our science EOG does count for us. We are the only elementary school that it does count because we have 30 students on our roster. So we have that privilege of having that. So our goal 2 is to say that 50% of our grade 5, our goal is to hopefully get to be proficient in that area as well. Goal 3 is about growth. We want to achieve exceeded growth status this year. We did this in 2019 and we would love to do this again in 2022 as well.
3 through 5, right?
Excuse me, 3 through 5. I'm sorry, I apologize.
You don't want to lose them, right?
I know, I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. And I'm Todd Morey, principal at Jones Senior High School. And we have 4 goals this year. Our school improvement team is an elected school improvement team, and the school improvement team came up with these goals during our summer retreat this summer, and then we've been working towards them ever since. So our first goal is our academic goal, and it's for the 2021-22 school year. Jones Senior High School will increase EOC and EOG scores by incorporating school-wide vocabulary strategies in all subject areas, as evidenced by a 10% or higher growth. Our second goal is a school climate and culture goal. It says by the end of 2021-22 school year, Jones Senior High School will create and implement a monthly staff and or student activity in order to facilitate more positive and productive school climate culture as measured by school surveys and teacher working condition surveys for parents, students, and teachers. Our third goal is a social emotional learning goal. It Says by the end of the 2021-22 school year, Jones Senior High School students will demonstrate self-awareness and self-management skills as evidenced by a minimum of a 20% decrease in the number of discipline referrals. And our fourth goal is a parent involvement goal. It says by the end of the 2021-22 school year, Jones Senior High School will establish a Community and Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, with at least 2 parents per grade level and host a minimum of 5 community events to increase parent and community involvement. Any questions?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was intentional.
Yeah, we will need to approve our school improvement. We will need to approve our school improvement.
Motion for approval on the
So
approval.
moved.
Second.
Stuart made a motion to approve the plan. Ms. Field, second, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no.
I want to thank y'all for making it short and sweet too, because we've had them long in years past. It's getting better every year. Thank you.
All right, moving into action item 4B, the approval of the field trip policy.
Dr. Zakin, at this time, would you like to address the principals?
Sure. I want to thank them for all the work they've done and the hard work they've done to get this school year started. I've been talking with sort of superintendents, and I talked with a guy from out of state this morning that said that this school year has been the most difficult one to get started they've ever had. And so our principals have done a fabulous job to get this year off and run the way they have, and a great deal of hard work with their staff, and yet they've been, they've had great attitudes, and I'm just thankful to work with them each and every day, and for the work they've done. They do good work, and they have good staff, and we're just thankful for their work with our kids and stuff. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
and y'all are welcome to, if you don't, you're welcome to stay, but you're okay with you.
That was a joke.
I think.
See you. We got ice cream in the back if you want.
Thank you, Dr. Zakin. Each of you should have a copy of the revised field trip policy. It was requested by board member Philia in September's meeting that we include background checks in regard to non-employees staying overnight on field trips. It was also requested by the board to include grading requirements. Those new revisions are highlighted.
Yeah, I know Ms. Fion had requested that at the last board meeting. And I agree with, one of them, but I don't know about the grade requirement. And that's what after me having time to read the policy and understand a little bit more. And it's just my opinion, and I was looking at number 6, and it said that field trips are part of the actual curriculum. So we're gonna take a fellow kid and I'll be a part of that curriculum or education that day. I just think that field trips are part of the education. We don't need to be taking that from. And second, we don't know what these field trips produce for a kid. We're in a small county, a lot of the kids don't get to leave this county. This could be life changing for a kid. They can go to the zoo and see something, and hey, I wanna work here when I grow up. It may turn around. So I think we should take that out because it is part of the educational curriculum.
I do see his point, but sometimes it also is a motivational factor for them wanting to be successful in that class so they can go on these trips. So there's a double variable there. But
I see some field trip going bowling, like, you know, I can somewhat agree with that, but if it's an educational trip, there's no confusion taking away from that.
So the word discretion be used in regard to administrative discretion. And that would give some leeway, depending on if the trip is educational or for fun.
That's true too. And discipline, I mean,
Can I-
sometimes a factor.
Can I ask a tough question? It was left out the first time. Did the administration feel that it needed to be left out?
The administration has not reviewed this policy. First reading was for the board.
So which is the number that shows the, well, I mean, it shows that their grades need to be.
Students.
Yeah. I don't think fall hole, which I'm not on this one. But I also see the term, I also see the word, just, you know, like Bryce is saying about discretion.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to take it, if you gotta, you don't want one kid to take away from everybody else's learning on the trip too, so I like the term discretion as well.
If it's a behavior, I mean, problem, definitely.
It could be revised to use the word discretion, and we could do a final reading.
Why don't we take them forward and say, instead of shall, may be, and give the administrator's discretion, if it's like an educational trip to Bosch or something where they're gonna be learning something,
That's-
let it
that's
go.
different.
And if it's,
Yeah.
is that, would that be, used may, and then Bryce and I just emphasize with the principals that if it's an endeavor where they want to get some academic benefit from, we will make sure they know that it was, you know, a reward type trip. Is it that reasonable?
I mean, that's just, in my opinion, I was fully agree with them. Yeah, that's a whole lot better clear, I think.
So they use discretion.
We can just change at the time of field trip, instead of shall be, we say may be, and then give us some discretion.
Have we got field trips planned between now and our next meeting, between November?
Yes, sir.
We do,
Yes, sir.
so you need some dollars or not?
Yes, sir.
I'm fine with what Dr. Cleveland said.
And we have the principals of the schools making the final decision, is that correct?
The board would make the final decision, and this would be presented to the principals as our policy. Our current policy,
I'm talking about in this, if there was a field trip were to come up, it'll be the principal's discretion.
The administrator will be the principal, or the teacher and the principal.
it would be the principal.
Will the teacher be the one that makes the recommendation to the principal, they make the decision? Is that how we're gonna work it?
They have to sign, each teacher usually has to sign a form. So number one, they'll know the kid's gonna be away from school that day. And then usually there's a place for what grade, unless it's changed, unless this form has changed. And, sometimes, you know, a kid has been a very distracted student in the classroom, as you may have mentioned, could cause a distraction on the trip.
Yeah,
I
I
see.
think it needs to be left up to the administrator at school, because if a kid's a problem, you don't want to take it away from the
I
rest
can
of the
see both
class.
ways.
If the teacher can't control them and the kid is, I think there's no need for punishing the rest of the classroom because the kid can't do it. And you ought to get thrown out of wherever you're going, whether it be, a park or a job facility if the kid's disruptive. So I'll make a motion to approve the field trip approval per Dr. Thigpen's suggestion. On the change or whatever it was.
Have a motion.
I make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to.
Oh, okay, I second.
Motion by Mr. Griffin to approve the trip approval with Dr. Thigpen's amendment on replacing shall amend it very last sentence. Ms. Fee, all seconded, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Bryce.
Our next item is a budget amendment for last fiscal year. We are requesting this budget amendment at the guidance of our auditors. They were in here the second week in September. The audit was clean. We have a draft and everything appears to be ready to send it to the LGC, and we had no findings. This item had actually occurred in last July, and we had, as a county, or as a school board, had followed the instructions of DPI on how to make this journal entry for the purchase of some buses. But that did not also account for the lease payment associated with those buses. The auditors have provided us guidance on how to do this moving forward. But to ensure we did not have an over expenditure, we are doing a budget amendment to cover the lease and the purchase of those buses. So I request that you approve this budget amendment.
Last July of 2020 or 2021? 2020.
2020.
I'll make a motion to adopt the budget amendment.
Second.
Mr. Griffin made a motion to accept the budget amendment. Mr. Brown second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thanks.
Thank you. Up next, you have a proposal from Pierce Group in reference to an EAP program. That's an employee assistance program. It would give our teachers and other staff members the opportunity to receive different types of counseling. They said they have started offering this for many other school districts given the stress associated with COVID. I'll tell you where I worked previously, we had this program, and I personally used it after Hurricane Florence. It's a great program. It gives you a chance to talk if you've had a death, a divorce, a hurricane, COVID, put you in contact with somebody to help support you. Other benefits, you can have it face to face. There's counseling sessions. They'll work with you about legal services, financial services, ID theft, all kinds of things like that are included. So we have a price per employee. It's $1.32 per month per employee. If we allow them to have 3 therapy sessions, if they want to offer up to 6 sessions, it's $1.87 per employee per month. So your annual cost for 6 sessions would be just over $6,300. So this is something they would like to include in our open enrollment as a benefit we're offering to the employees at no cost. And like I said, it costs us $6,300 annually to offer this to our employees.
And that covers everybody from Dr. Thigpen down to the last person behind.
Yes.
How about board members?
I don't know, but we can find out.
Probably not. We don't get.
Well, you're showing on our employee list, though, there's probably a good chance the answer is yes.
I'll make a motion to do it if there's no other questions.
I'll second that.
Motion to accept the employee assistance program by Mr. Griffin, second by Ms. Fee. All in favor, say aye.
And this is the sixth one, sixth session.
Yes. Well, I'm assuming that's what you're putting.
Is that what we were talking about, Bill?
Yeah,
6 sessions?
yeah, whatever 60% of all
That covers the,
You got that, Candace?
Mhm.
Griffin, Ms. Field?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0.
thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Did $1.89 for additional sessions come out of employees after that, or?
And, there was a sign with my truck paper.
Tim, you're up. Athletic field change orders.
Athletic field change order. I've put a copy of this in front of each of you, and if you'll look on pages behind, they have change orders listed. And I guess some of these I'm gonna have to beg for forgiveness because I've already given Joy it. And the reason I did is because it would hold up the project, and it did because it had to do with soil compaction. So we'll go over these one at a time in order, and it needs your approval. So would y'all like to vote on these one at a time, or how would you like to do it all at one time? Or?
I say we do all 4 of these at the same time.
Okay.
I'd like to ask some questions about this.
And we will, let's go to one at a time. The first change order is listed as number 1. It's undercut the backfield for footers. And this was the purchase of 57 stones. In the area of the project that was the old gymnasium area, when they come in to do the compaction on the soils, they ended up going down 5 feet to get good soils. So to meet the requirements of the engineer for the footers, we had to bring in 57 stone compacted to meet the compaction on the footers. And I actually told them to go ahead and move forward just because I didn't want to hold up that project. Because, that's why you see those structures going up now, is because those footings, regardless, it had to be done. There was no a way around doing this just to meet engineering compaction that was required to put the building on the property. So that one, is kind of self-explanatory. Number 2,
Is that the only, are we done with the undercut situations? Or have they uncovered all the dirt?
as far as I know, everything should be done with undercut, because at this point in time, and another one of these change orders that you'll see, and we'll get to it, talks about that. And, that's the one that's still pending. Number 2's, this is one of my recommendations, is that it is not approved. They come back and wanted to extend the, netting down the baseball field, 50 feet. And the purpose of that is in case you get a ball that goes over the fence, because that's the bleacher area immediately behind that. The cost of doing that was to be $41,300 to extend that 51 feet. I think we can actually move the bleachers and accomplish what we want to do without really interfering with the project whatsoever. I discussed this with the project manager out there in depth, and he feels the same way.
So we need to save this 41,000, not spend this 41?
Absolutely, that's my recommendation to the board, is that we save this.
I like
So they designed the field without having the net in front of the bleachers?
Well, the field was designed that way, and we accepted and approved it that way. But, it was additional netting they were putting up. It's not a standard thing to do that. Our other fields don't have it on it. It's kind of an afterthought, and at that point in time, when they brought it to me, I told them, I said, go ahead and put me a number on it, and if it's a reason, then we'll look at it. But otherwise, let's come up with an alternative, and the alternative would be moving the bleachers down for the fans. And if it had been a reasonable amount of money, I would have been all for it. $41,000 to me to do that is not a reasonable amount of money. Any other questions?
So you're gonna try to, I mean, we're gonna eliminate this number two.
Number two is gonna be eliminated.
Well, as long as.
As long as everyone is in agreement.
I'm gonna be another $40,000.
Because of netting, we're putting on that field required to post and netting, instead of razor wheel. It's costly equipment.
Sure.
On this ball field project, we put a lot of stuff in that you probably won't normally see. The normal field, we kind of upgraded that for looks, appearance, and get more bang for our buck. And that was one of them.
So, go ahead. You got it.
This has netting already in the backstop,
It does.
but they wanted to take it down towards the dugout. But the bleachers are behind the netting already, right?
Well, if we so choose to put it there, we can readjust the bleachers to accommodate that.
Are these bleachers and the ones that you're trying to protect, is this over there like third base and further down the line?
No, it's actually first base line down to be in the area of the roadway. This would have been on the baseball field. And if you went over there to the dirt road that leads to the ball field, it was that area over there with that bleacher side.
But you've got two sets of stands, right, on each side. You got one kind of right there between first base and home.
Wow.
Is that right? Then there's another set that heads down to the outfield, or am I wrong about that?
There's none that does head down to that.
And that's the one you're trying to protect with the extra fencing, is the one that heads further down.
Right. And I think we can adjust those bleachers to accommodate.
I don't see many fields that even protect that second row of stands.
So they started to because of the injuries. That's why they probably came back. That's what I was trying to figure out, was it some down the line?
I think there's some down the
And
line.
that's why they're doing it, because the protection on it now. I didn't know.
So you're gonna try to take that second set and just push it further.
Push it further down.
Okay,
And I think we can achieve what we need to do by doing that.
sure. I mean, that name, you're gonna protect that first row of bleachers with that pop fly that's straight in there. I mean,
But
can't put them in plastic.
no, that was my sentence, exactly.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, moving right along. And number 4, you have on your list, at the cost of $484. This is, and it will seem like a small item, the exhaust fans for restrooms and concession stand. And the reason we run into this problem, and part of it is my fault, if you look at the plans on that, part of that concession stand was cantilevered. It's cantilevered to a maximum point. And what I mean by cantilevered, for those who are not familiar with construction, is there's no post standing on that roof as it sticks out. So the roof is self-supported. And when I looked at that on the plans and seeing the width, I requested that they tighten that cantilever up from 16 inch on center to 12 inch on center. The framing they were using, just because I was still afraid of a sag on that roof without it being supported by a post. In doing that, I failed to remind them to go back and resize the bathroom fans so they would fit in that. The solution was to further the bathroom fans down and do a corral and put them in. And sightly and headroom, I didn't feel like that was the thing to do. So I recommended that we decrease the size of the fan and fit it in there. And the cost of those fans and the change in that order is gonna be $484 a total. And my recommendation is that we do that.
Don't think there'll be an issue for downsizing.
No.
Okay.
No, the fans that we expect are the same CFM, so that shouldn't be a problem. The difference in price is because of the size of the fan and maintain the same CFM. Any more questions?
You wanna speak on number 3 yet?
Okay, number 3 is, They still haven't got a price back from us on that. Number 3 was debris that were found on the property that were not done in the first demo. There's a septic tank that was discovered in that area back there in the back that was pre-existing from the first school that was put there. It wasn't taken out there in demolition. There was other debris back there that had to be taken out as well. Where the actual boiler room was in the old gymnasium, that was caved in and was never pulled out like it should have been. You've probably seen that area for a long time. It had to reach, drill in and all that. That little area that had to be demoed as well. And when I talked to Tim about this, there was some concern about what his contractors were charging for that. So they were still in the point of negotiating price. This is one of those things, again, like the footing capacity, that has to be done. It had to come out. And that was for the drains to go in where they had to go at. Because we've got in-ground drains and this field don't have ditches on it. It's got everything in-ground drains, so it takes it out. And places that these in-ground drains went in, was probably run over these debris that had to be taken out. But as I said, there's not been a number put on that yet. So we really, although we may have to approve it, I don't know what that number is, so I didn't submit that as for approval this time.
Well, let me ask you a question while we're doing this. There's some of this stuff, it looks like they should assess the property a little bit different when they're doing the bid. We're talking about almost a $3 million project. And they're not, but, some of this stuff should have been, in my opinion, looked over with their product, whoever was doing the assessment. I'm not saying it ain't gotta be done, but it looks like to me, somebody, we don't need to have to take the blunt of the money because they didn't fulfill maybe their estimators doing their job. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking. That's what, I know you're caught between a rock and a hard place, but we gotta have it done.
Yeah.
But what is our fault and what is their fault when it comes to bidding? That's the part that I got. I mean, Myron, you're in construction, is this normal on stuff like this, in your opinion? To do change orders on something they overlooked or didn't see? Or we knew there was septic tanks out there with the ag building and some of those anyway.
We did, but the first contract required these septic tanks to be taken out by faults.
Right.
And it was understood that they were taken out by faults.
See, that's what I was gonna ask, was it something that we missed on demolition from the school?
That's what it was, as far as that.
That they knew was there, these people may not have.
But when we were doing the bid, we say, was it in the contract that we would cover any unforeseen stuff that was on the property that we were assuming was out? You know what I mean? You see where I'm going?
I understand what you're saying. And I wish it could work like that. And if we put the work in the contract stating that, then they would probably be stuck with it. But when they bid a project, they bid it at face value and what it is. And they bid it as the demo had been complete on that property before they got there. Now, the one thing they did realize is that the demo didn't go to the extent it should have, and debris were left out there a foot
But
down.
we had trees and poles and everything else out there. I mean, they knew they were gonna have to do something.
So they did know that, and they took that into consideration. And that was a costly item on that, mucking out a foot of soil over that whole field and bringing a foot back in and then topsoil on top of that. So they did realize that, but all the structures should have been taken out of that project prior to, and that was their understanding, and that was my understanding.
Well, maybe we need to pass it on back to the ones that were supposed to take it out to begin with. I mean, that may be a common question.
I mean, there were 4 or 5 foot pieces of pipe pulled out the ground out there, wasn't there, Tim? I mean, there were big pieces of stuff, that's concrete pipe.
There's a lot of debris left out there that met the criteria of the first contract that should have been moved, and it wasn't.
Oh, I said, I don't know where we're at. I'm saying for us to keep.
Now, the way that worked, when that project was going on out there, you got to understand that Foss reported to Metcon reported to myself and me, or the building owner, and we were the tenants on the backside of all this. So I don't know what direction you would take to even get back to force their hand, because it was a known issue at the time, and it was brought to their attention.
So,
But no one quite knew how to go about making it happen. Maybe that was the best way to put
so there was some oversight on the project.
it.
Just
Well,
didn't force the hand.
exactly.
We left one building out there that was on the property pulled down because we were gonna use the cold media center and all this got flooded. So that was on us by like $72,000. And we knew that was there, but it was hooked up to the sewer system. It wasn't hooked to the septic tank system. The ag building was hooked to the septic tank system, was it not?
No,
It was hooked to the.
everything on that property was hooked to the lift station for public sewage, and the old stuff was abandoned, but it was left in the ground. So the old septic system was left in the ground from the beginning. As a matter of fact, the building that we had demoed, I know for a fact that everything was taken out down to the rock bed that was under the building, because I was oversighting that project. I know what was taken out of there. The other project, I didn't have a lot of oversight in saying that. Other than I would come back and say the debris is still there, that needs to be moved several times over and over and over.
Billy, this can be written two different ways. If you say that the owner, which is us, is gonna take all the risk for the unforeseen, then the price stays down from the contractor. If you say, Mr. Contractor, you're gonna take all the risk for unforeseen, their price is gonna raise 10%. So this is the safest bet for an owner to do, is for us to take the unforeseen, and I think we're doing okay for.
Yeah, our cost is really not been so good as unforeseen. 57 stone, 40 tons, that's not really a big, I got the numbers here on what.
You're talking about a septic tank now, that's not gonna be a huge area.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a lot of money. I mean, we're looking at $4,840 for the backfill and undercut. And then that demo, I would imagine somewhere, I don't know, but it should be somewhere in that same neighborhood. But I do not have the number
Same neighborhood of which one of it,
of what the undercut was for
Change order one.
change order. I could foresee it being probably even more than that.
well, I mean, I was just asking whose responsibility was it
It's-
to do the oversight, you know, that's where I was trying to get at.
Right.
I mean, the project came bid, you know, we bid it for what, 2.8, $4 million. I don't know who was good, who wasn't, but I mean, we would bid it out, but I just wondered who should be responsible. It's not really a change order as much as it is an oversight order. Right, we're not really changing anything in the ball fields except for the exhaust fans,
Right.
but we're having to do something to the overlay because of it.
We're having.
And that's not a change order, that's just an increase.
It's an increased cost because we didn't know that was there.
It's an unforeseen.
Yeah, the only thing that's really changed order is the exhaust fans, because we're not doing nothing with the net,
Right.
so.
Well, this, number one is a change order, because I mean, we could sit there and negotiate the, what did he do, $100 a yard? Right, Tim?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a negotiable item.
Well, it ain't gonna be that much, I just think, I'd rather have a good relationship, but I just
I
want
just,
to, I'm always on the end that's got to pay, I never
I
want to
understand
see.
it, and I'm writing the check, I wouldn't want to pay either.
Yeah,
But just like, Ms. Les stated, I mean, it's, you either pay when they bid, or you pay when they fine, but you're gonna pay either way.
right.
I think that's the safest way for all the parties.
If it's not, if we can give you some kind of guidance on the fair price on the septic tank within the guideline, I have no problem approving this as long as I'm not doing that net. I mean, that's a lot.
I agree with that.
I brought the net up, but I've already sent that email, that it's gonna be a no-go item at this point in time, not to consider it until I presented it to you, or the board itself. So at this point in time, nobody, the understanding is not right. I didn't want somebody to make a mistake and order something like it. because everybody's trying to get ahead of getting supplies and materials in a timely manner. So I've already sent that email out, but that's gonna be a no-go item unless you decide otherwise.
What do you think is an acceptable number for the removal of the set the tank back to on it?
I don't have all the information. Right now, I know that was one of the items that was removed because I actually witnessed it. And, it was a pretty big tank that they pulled out. It was a, for lack of a better word, it was a home built tank.
The home-built thing?
Well, I call it that. It was,
Was it blocked?
back in the day, we called them Warsaw tanks, whatever, but it was a block tank. It was built in place just like the little schools out there. It was engineered and built, but it's not one that you can see purchased like you would for a project or home. It was built in place. So it's not just don't confuse that with your 1,000-gallon tank because that's not what it was. When they pulled it out of the ground, there was a lot of debris that had to come out with it.
Yeah, I thought it was all concrete block.
It was.
And you're 100% sure you can get that from other places behind the net?
Yes, sir, we'll move it soon. I'm 100% sure of that.
So the only ones that we can really approve tonight will be 1 and 4. Is that about it?
Yeah, I don't have, I'll make a motion to approve them and then we can get a consensus vote and approve the other one if it's within reason. If we can do that. That way when you get a number and if we don't feel like it's too high, then I think we'll be all right. If we give you an unrestricted thing, they like to come up and want to be on the top end of it, in my opinion. So I'll make a motion to do 1 and 2.
1 and 4.
1 and 4, I'm sorry.
Yeah, two.
1 and 4.
I'll go get a
1 and
shed
4.
All right, got a motion for Mr. Griffin to accept items 1 and 4 on the change orders. I hear a second.
Not second.
Ms. Field, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0. Appreciate that.
You need to
Do we need to make a motion to do a consensus vote over the phone or whatever after you get us a number or we want to try this? Because I assume this has got to be done. Or they've already pulled it out, so they're just trying to get a number of what's going to satisfy whoever pulls it out. They already filled it in too. They have, well, hey, we don't vote on it. They already done.
Well, I don't know what the dollar amount's gonna do.
Do what?
I don't know what that dollar amount's gonna do.
Well, they should have a dollar amount on that pretty quick. If they want to get paid.
It's not gonna hold anything up, so let's do this. Let me get a dollar amount and bring it back to you next time.
That's good.
And that way, if y'all got concerns, we can discuss it, or I can get back, tell them we're not gonna pay it. Or we're gonna default on pay whatever y'all want to do. But it's not gonna hold the project up, so it's not important.
I think what we need to do is just leave it alone until we get the approve and see what happens. And then if they come up with extra bill, then we're gonna deal with it.
Put that in form of a motion, that's it. And as far as the no-go item, if y'all want to vote on that, then just table it.
Which one?
Number 3. I'm sorry.
Number 2.
Number 2, extending the ball field. Did y'all want to disapprove that?
Yes, you're probably.
I would like to disapprove, but I still would like to see where you're going,
Yeah,
where you're going to pencil that in,
that's all my concern.
if you don't mind.
I'll make a motion to put a hold on that until the following meeting, because we ain't gotta do it, it won't be done by November anyway.
No.
What, the net?
Huh?
We're talking about the net?
Well, I was talking about number 2,
The extending,
but he said we needed to disapprove it, didn't you?
well,
I thought we were just gonna flat out
Yeah.
stop it in its tracks right now.
well, that's fine. I didn't know if y'all would have a consensus on it, that y'all had addressed it. That's all for the minutes.
Just wait on it.
I don't think it's gonna be an issue if you do the bleachers.
Okay.
That's my opinion, but I mean, I'm
No,
not.
Then we'll let it stand, and I told them that we're not going to do anything with it, and then just be a y'all issue. If y'all want to vote on that.
Can you show us or send us a round?
Yeah.
Pencil in where you think you might move it to.
Okay. Can do that.
Cool.
And then I just present it at the next meeting, is that way you'll vote on it?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Does this all fall the same way?
no,
Good question.
It's not.
It's just an issue.
I'm sure.
Why is it not an issue at the softball? Just different dimensions? Cool, gotcha.
There's no more questions,
Appreciate it, Tim. Thank you.
Sure thing.
On to 4F, the 2021-22 mass discussion update.
So, got it up, our numbers from our web page that I've updated, it outlines the number of quarantines that we've had each week. And you can see that number has fallen from 140 and 180 down to the last week. Those numbers are through last Thursday. We had 12 quarantines. There were 2 added that they didn't have time to get in when I reported, but you can see the drastic number.
You scroll up, what those column reads are.
So this is our quarantines, staff quarantines, staff positives, and student positives.
Are those cumulative or are those new ones each?
This is for this week. That row would be for that week. So if you would add up, if you would total them up, that would give you your cumulative. So your staff quarantines would be 2, 3, 10, 13.
Why wouldn't you have one testing positive, but they're not quarantined? Tell me the difference in that. On week 27 through October 1, don't you still quarantine that one staff member tested positive? Or is it testing positive on the week before and already in quarantine, or 2 weeks before that?
Well, you can add that 40 and that 143, and that will be the total number that are out. But you got 143 out quarantined, and
Right.
40 out that are positive.
But go down to the last week that you got, and you got staff positive 1, but you got staff quarantine 0. So you got 1 out, is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Nobody else is quarantined, okay.
So the previous week doesn't matter to what's happening that week.
Right.
So if you were to go out there and look, you've got 6 student positives right now for
That week, we had 6 student positives, 1 staff positive, and 12 student quarantines.
So
What would we call the student quarantine?
What we call it?
They got the mask on. Right?
It would have to be a situation where they were around and there was no mask.
It could be, the quarantine could be from coming from home, right?
Absolutely, siblings.
now, if you got 6 positive from September 20th, they gotta be out 10 days, quarantine 10 days.
With a positive with a negative test, we can return after 7 days.
7 days. But the total we have students out right now, as of last Friday, was only 18. Or was there some from the week before that's not in that 18? You see what I'm asking?
That's what I've been asking, but he's saying that week, we've got 18 now,
There's only 18 kids out total
that week.
that week. None out but none are left over from the week before that, right?
If they went out and couldn't return, that may linger over to the following.
Okay.
So I didn't,
But those numbers do come into that 12, right, from the previous week.
no.
At the end of the day, you could possibly have more than 12 out on Friday, because you had some that might have tested positive on Thursday, Friday before, and hadn't met the 7-day
Right.
minimum requirement with a negative test. Is that correct?
These are only.
That's what I mean.
The new positives and the new quarantines, if they're still, they still have to be out due to something from the week previous.
Are y'all gonna recommend this to stay in the mask mandate?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. For this next month.
Okay.
So how do we get a clear snapshot of how many are truly out? We don't know how many out of that 43 the previous week are out now inside that new 12.
Well,
Or am I misunderstanding it?
what you're asking is, say tomorrow, if we wanted to count how many kids were totally out, you could tell us, correct?
We could go to.
But you can't see that from this chart.
Right.
It's too mixed up. I mean, they can tell you on the daily thing.
And the reason I went to doing it this way is, remember last year, we kept adding cumulative positives and all that. and that's how we had done
Yeah.
it last year. And so
I think
that was
it's
kind of
yeah, I think the way you did it, you're doing it now is a little bit easier to understand. We're not, that we cut it way back, because you can't really tell if you're doing it cumulative.
Right.
It's hard to tell what's going on.
And so but you could call us and say, how many do we have out
So-
right now? We could kind of.
More than likely, we got less than, say, those two numbers are 55. So we got probably less than 55 total students out right now because they've been out we
Absolutely.
should have covered the 2 weeks. So it
Absolutely.
should be 55 or less.
I would say probably
Go.
25.
Right.
25.
It's a relation.
Yeah.
I counted this morning, actually it was this afternoon, and it's 25 total.
25.
It's 25 total blended with what Mr. Griffin said, the 43. So our total out right now is 25 kids.
Yeah, okay.
But why wouldn't that number be on that week quarantine? That,
Well, they're not taking the ones from the week before though, because if they don't test positive, it'd be hard. This is just, each one of those are new quarantines every week. And so you got people rotating off, so it's gonna be hard to, it'd be real hard to do it at the end of the day. You just have to do it.
Some of them got off during the week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, they start their time.
Yeah, the only other way you could probably do it is just take every Friday what's happened that week. You know, you put the amount that you tested positive, then the total amount was out, and that would tell you what you're asking, Ron, I think. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but it just, to me, that's,
It's hard to understand what way it is, I understand what you're saying.
yeah.
But what you wanna know is, say Friday at lunchtime,
How many
give us the
kids?
total that's all out
How
there
many
for that, the entire system.
But, you know, if that works for you, y'all, I'm okay. I just,
Yeah, well, you
to
can
me,
tell,
it just,
it shows us gradually going down, that's a good thing.
sure, yeah, I mean, we obviously can see that, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, the chart that Dr. Sigmund created actually is just reflective of new cases each week.
We don't really know how much our mandate had to do with this because they spend more time away from us than they do with us, but if you go by the numbers, you know, it looks like the mask mandate has certainly turned things around. I don't, you know, you don't ever know what's what with this stuff, but it looks like there's a correlation here.
Well, you can tell with the student quarantine is really turning around, it's like quarantine side, you can't really tell about positive side, the quarantine side.
But, you know,
Well, it both fits, but.
Well, I do know that we've got some, neighboring districts who have gone back to mask option. I don't know exactly which one, I'm pretty sure, I think Trinity did.
Yeah.
Is that the only one that you know of?
I remember, I heard about Penrose, I've seen it everywhere, but that's the only one I've seen going back. But I can check. See if there's any
Maybe for next month, let us know.
I'll do
It's
that.
usually listed too.
I think maybe some of the western communities.
I mean, for me, I like to see our student policies go down just a little bit more. That's just,
And that's what we went to for.
I mean, I don't know what everybody else is thinking.
Dr. King, those last 4 weeks, that's when we mandated the full mask, is that? The rules changed.
Those numbers being relayed to our media outlets.
Do we need to make a motion to continue the mask mandate? We're supposed to revisit it, I'll make a motion to continue the mask mandate till something better.
I'll second that.
That was the stay in our mask mandate. Okay. Motion by Mr. Griffin, stay in our mask mandate, second on Mr. Walston. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0.
The news media question, Bryce had communicated with the news media and told them they could check this chart to see how weekly dates. That was couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, Bryce?
It was.
Some of them doing that.
It was WCTI. They called and they wanted, somebody from the county office to complete, a questionnaire, 18 to 20 questions. And I had to be really blunt with them, Myron, and say, I don't work for you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, I work for Jones County Public Schools. It'll be on your website. If you want the story, you go get it. And, she didn't care for it at that time, but, to send me a questionnaire of 10 questions and I need it back in an hour, just didn't seem appropriate.
This is on our website, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you told them that way. You could have used a
So-
few other words with it and might have understood it better.
So the comparison number that they're using across on that media, they'll be taking the 6 and divide that by, what do we got, 1,017, is that right?
Less than 1%.
Yeah, which if I remember correctly is pretty sharp compared to the others.
If I could make a suggestion about the thing on this chart, at the end of October, the 4th through the 9th, you can do the same thing you're doing, and then just maybe in parentheses, put down the number for that Friday that were total quarantine that covered from the week before, whatever. In parentheses, it would be a lot easier for me to understand how we're doing.
Just after this zero right here, just have brackets.
Do I?
Just right here, have another column
Mhm.
or something that.
Yeah, on both of the student quarantine and other, you can put the parentheses for that total week. That would give us a total for, all the quarantines that were out at the end of that week Friday. But you got the total for the whole week already, but that covers the week before, or whatever's left over.
So this is the Friday snapshot, is that what I'm understanding?
Friday, one.
It would be easier for me to, I would know what's kind of going on, like the 25 you had this morning or whatever, we probably did close to 25 on Friday.
Is that what I asked for?
Yeah, that's what I was telling them, I didn't know they did it or not.
All right, good deal. Any further discussion on the mask updates? All right, we'll move into item 4G, the transfers.
So we've had some discussion concerning our transfer policy and really considering possibly, how we do that. And so, we're open to discussion and suggestion from you as to what you would like to see concerning the transfers, if you want us to really evaluate what we're doing.
Okay, we're talking about in-county transfers from school to school, correct?
Yes, sir.
In my opinion, if we got teachers, any staff member assigned to a certain school, and their kids are able to go to that school, and there's room for it at the beginning of the year, I feel like if they want to send their, say they live in Maysville, they work in Trenton, or whatever, live in Paulsville, they work in Trenton, if they request and there's room for their kids, they ought to be able to go, in my opinion, he would stay where the parent is, but middle way school systems here, I don't know how I feel about that. And I'm not talking about anybody in specific or anything, but I'm just saying, somebody might have a falling out with a teacher after they've been there for a month or so, and they don't like it, so they want to kind of move. Well, I don't think that's really a great situation unless you feel like it's okay, but I don't feel like,
What if the home situation might change as you get into the school year? That's not really our responsibility, but it would affect the situation. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Case by case basis.
where the child's residing at, actually residing, stuff like that.
well, I mean, on a situation like that, I mean, that's maybe a hardship case, and so that's a little bit different. But I mean, that's, they're trying to keep training from being so overcrowded.
That's right.
One of the things. I mean, I'm not talking about now, but that's why this policy came up.
Specific that we wouldn't allow any transfers, I thought.
But-
True.
In my opinion, any staff member, whether it be a teacher, a custodian, bus driver, or whatever, if they're employed on campus at a certain school, and their kids are eligible to be, grade wise in that school, I feel like they ought to have the opportunity, if that parent wants them to go to that school. But I think they put in, they'll know when they're assigned, they can put in a request within a short period of time.
I asked for this item to be put on the agenda, and it wasn't for it to be transferred to Trenton, it wasn't to be transferred to Maysville. It was mirroring Mr. Griffin's comments that all employees be considered for transfer, not just teachers.
Well, I think it should be any school. If you live in Trenton and work in Maysville, I think the child should,
Yeah,
should be able to go. It doesn't matter what school goes where.
I'm not concerned about the schools, the whatever, is that I would like to see the policy that all employees.
Yeah, well, I meant school system wide. I wasn't using just the Trenton. I'm talking about wherever that staff member works, if they want their child to go to that school, if they're eligible to go there.
Yeah, that's what,
And they have,
that's what this was about, not about anything. The
if
policy just say all employees, not, right now, the standard is just teachers or allowed.
Well, you guys would have transferred the employee anyway, right?
No, that's why it's on this agenda.
If there were space and it were not denied by the teacher, transfers were automatic. But if it were not a teacher, they were not automatic. It came down to the principal.
It may be in the way I worded the motion or something, and I think it ought to be all staff.
Yeah.
A custodian is just as important as
Oh, I
a
agree with
principal.
that.
This
In
is
certain.
This is all this discussion was supposed to be about.
This is really,
I agree with that.
That's it.
this is really a double employee. She's also a bus driver.
Well, we're not talking about any particular individual, we're talking about in policy right now.
Should be whoever who is legally by the court system, it should be that guardian.
Right.
Legal guardianship proof.
So we will update policy 4150.
If I need to make a change order in the policy, I'll make it that for all staff to have the opportunity to have their child, if there's room, because if there's an issue with something, because, sometimes you got EC guidelines and stuff that they might not have room, they're already full, they may have to go where they gotta go. But if all possible, at the discretion of, or whatever, whatever how you wanna word it. But it should, all staff should be considered the same, but it don't need to come the other way to give it at the assignment.
Like I said, all I wanted was that all staff, that's it.
So has a legal guardianship.
Yeah, no, education rights, or whatever you want to call
So what's the motion?
All staff have the opportunity to have their child available in the place they're employed.
Okay.
As long as they make up all the guidelines from it.
Mr. Griffin made the motion that all staff, instead of the word teachers only, be included for transfers. Mr. Brown, second, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
I know we've already done the deal now, but this is gonna, I think I just heard Ms. Fial say something about it. This is gonna depend on guardianship. Is this what we're saying?
The legal
it.
parent,
I need that education rights, or,
it's usually court appointed if it's not their birth parent.
Because what you're gonna run into is you're gonna have a grandparent taking care of this child, but the grandparent may not have legal guardianship of this child. I'm just trying to say that example may arise.
But they might have educational rights.
So they'd have to have an educational affidavit.
Right. They don't have to work anywhere, right? So, yeah.
Oh,
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be legal guardian as long as they have this. I got you.
Motion carries 5-0. All right. Moving into item 4H, executive session. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel reasons pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-31811A 1, 3, and 6.
A motion again.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Walson, second by Mr. Griffin, all in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 5-0. We will enter closed session at this time.
You called the guy about the shrimp? I didn't have no place to put them.
Yes?